Hello again, everyone. It's Paul here from Using Technology Better. Hopefully you found video 1 incredibly useful. This is video 2. This is where we're going to dig a little bit deeper into some of those things that we showed in part 1 of the Mac Essentials series. So don't forget, you can pause this video at any stage, have a go yourself. We know that we learn by doing. So if you can actually pause the video at different stages and then click on those tools that we're exploring together, I think you'll find this a much more productive video. Good luck, everyone. Hello, everyone. We're in video 2. We've made it through video 1, which is great, and now we're on video 2. We're going to dig a little bit deeper into some of those tools and settings that we explored in the first video. So if you haven't watched the first video, please go back and watch that. It gives a really good overview of the menu and the dock and where everything is. But in this session, we want to dig a little bit deeper into some of those settings that we looked at and really kind of reveal different layers in regard to what we can do in those different sections. I'll also give you some tips in what I normally turn on to help my productivity and efficiency on my Mac. And so I'll give some advice about what I think is worth turning on and also switching off at the same time. Some of those sessions that we'll be looking at today is definitely diving into system settings a little bit more in Spotlight. We'll be looking at the notification center, how you can keep up to date with things that are happening and customize those widgets on the right-hand side of what we do. We'll be delving into the trackpad in a little bit more depth. We'll be looking at how you can use multiple gestures and different fingers and different areas to activate things like mission control that we explored in the last session. And then we'll also be looking at accessibility and split view, some of the tools that are built into Mac and do a really good job of making content more accessible to you going forward. So let's jump right into it. One of the things that we want to look at a little bit more is the system settings today. So we'll be exploring that a little bit more. We looked at it in the first video, but we'll be touching on some of those areas that might help you customize your desktop a little bit more. We'll definitely be touching a lot more on Spotlight. It's once again the place where we go to find things really quickly and efficiently, and it's something that I think all users need to become experts at as finding information going forward. We're going to look at the notification center as well. They're those little widgets on the right-hand side when we click on the notification center, which is up at your date at the top right-hand corner. And it allows you to have quick looks at things like notes, calendars, even the weather, or things that you would like to see in regard to the content that you can view on your map. For example, if you're working across different regions or different countries or different continents, you might look at your clock and having that accessible in your notification center and your widgets because it's something that you use quite often. So we'll be looking at the notification center today as well. We'll also be looking at split view, how we can work a little bit more efficiently with multiple apps at the one time. We might be using a web browser and notes at the same time, or we might even be using two tabs or two different web pages and doing some cloud-based documents and also looking at some content on the right-hand side. So we'll be looking at how to use split view and working with two apps side by side or two browsers side by side. And we'll be delving into the trackpad a little bit more. What can you do more with your trackpad in regard to setting that up for success and getting used to the trackpad as we go on the Mac itself? So once again, they're the specifics that we'll be looking at. So why don't we get out of my little keynote presentation here and we'll minimize this by hitting the top yellow little button there. And now we are ready to go. So as I mentioned before, there's two ways of accessing, or three ways of accessing our system settings. We can go up to our Apple and we can click on our system settings there. That will get it up beautifully. We can go down to the little icon, system settings down the bottom, depending on your preference. And then we've also got our Spotlight, our little magnifying glass where we can go to system and you can see it starts to pick up what I'm looking for each time. Now, this is a great way to explore the different aspects of what we're doing. For example, appearance, if you like dark mode, light mode, we can do all of that through the system settings down the bottom. On the left-hand side, we can also sign in with your Apple ID if you're using that as part of your client services. We can do that as well. Some of these we'll be exploring a little bit more, but once again, it's a great way of looking at how do I access my Bluetooth, my network that I'm on, my sounds, my notifications, my screen time, all of those different things. Some of the things that we explored in that first session was Control Center and how you can add those to our Control Center, which is the top right-hand corner here, our little button. So we looked at adding those because that's a nice, quick, easy way of looking at tools. We looked at things in the last session like Touch ID. We can look at things like when we want lock screen, when we want our wallpapers and our displays coming up to customize and have that a little bit more built in regard to the things that we're doing. We can even customize our dock and have that larger or smaller. We can have our magnifier on in regard to finding things. And we can actually turn on our stage manager that we explored, for example, in the last session as well. So our system settings is our place to go when you first get your Mac to really customize it and make it all about you in regard to going forward. So I'm going to hit my little red cross here just to get out of my system settings. And then I'm going to go up to my spotlight for the second time. We went through this a little bit in our first session, but let's look at this a little bit further. This is where we type in keywords or look for documents. So our naming conventions is very, very important. But if I look for an employee, let's say his name is Ralph, you can see here that it not only looks for folders and content, but it also does some searches within the native apps and also third-party apps that we can actually find. I'm not sure why it's looking up Ralph Lauren, but that's okay. It's giving me some knowledge there going forward. The bit that I'm actually looking for is the employee performance review for Ralph Smith. So once again, if I just type in Smith, I'm going to get all of those different documents in regard to Ralph Smith. I've got his data. I've got some different things here. The one that I'm looking for is the notes on his performance review. So if I click on that performance review, you can see here I've created a little document on Ralph in regard to his performance, his reliability, and some different key criteria elements that goes under his role description. So we'll go into notes a little bit more in productivity, but it's where we can actually do some quick notes and we can put down some content from meetings and do little checklists and different things going forward. So you can see here that we've got different elements from Ralph that actually comes up in Spotlight. So for example, if we looked at his performance summary here and we were doing some digging on that, we could definitely go to our Spotlight and look at that performance summary that will actually bring up those key indicators here. So it's a great way of searching for different things. We also touched on very briefly in our last session that once you've opened an application on your Mac, you can go up to Notes, which is near the Apple, and look at the settings for that. So you can look at the notes, you can see what version it is. You might like to update it if it's looking for an update. You might like to go into the individual settings of Notes and see how you can customize that, how you're actually able to create a quick note, the default text size, and a whole range of different things. You can even lock certain notes in regard to privacy. But the point is that we can go up to individual apps that we're in and we can customize them by looking at how that application actually reveals to you on your Mac itself. So that's another thing that we touched on in the first video, but it's a great way of customizing the apps that you use, turning on, for example, different elements that might have some advanced settings there and looking at how that application operates within your Mac itself. So let's just minimize that. That's a good way to actually look at some different areas here. The other thing that we want to look at in this video here is our notifications. So if I go up to where my date is and I tap on that, you can see that I've got all of these little widgets coming through. It's got my news items from Apple, it's got my stock, it's got my usage and my screen time in regard to how much I'm using this, which we'll look at in a later video for screen time at looking at how you can monitor your usage on your Mac, which is a great way to do it. And I've also got my clocks of some different people that I work with clients across the world. I've got my calendar. I haven't got a lot of items set up for today, but that's okay. I've got my weather and what's new and some range of different things. Now you can turn these widgets on and off. So if I turn this one off, it kind of gets rid of it. I might not want to actually see some different aspects here, so I can actually customize those. I'll tap on that again, or click on that again. If I go down the bottom of my widgets, you can see here there's a little edit widgets in my notification center. So I can actually bring that up. I can look at the widgets that I want to have, and I can bring those over into my suggestions. So it's actually got my suggestions there that I can actually put in here. So I can kind of add my status of my battery, for example, that can come up. You can see there. I can then click and move that to the top if that's a widget that I really want to see my battery life in. And then I can actually start to have a look at how I can customize my settings. So I might like my calendar to be in that format in my widgets. So I'm going to press on the add. It brings it up, and then I can drag that up into the top of my widgets and maybe get rid of the other one that I don't want, which is this one here. And so now I've got a calendar view, or a view that I can actually use that's a lot more useful for me because I can see what I've got on for the day. So why don't we go through that again? I'm going to press done. We click on our notification elements here, which is where our date is. We go down to the bottom. We edit our widgets, and we can add and subtract the different widgets that we'd like so that we can quickly have that up. I know a lot of people have those up and use those quite a lot in regard to their notification and being able to view those as we go through. So that's the notification center, looking at those different aspects. Why don't we jump into split views? It's one functionality that I know a lot of people want to use. How do we open up multiple apps and have them maximized on our screens? So why don't we open up our notes again? So I've got my notes open, and I'm just going to drag these little windows over here, and I'm just going to drag over these little bars here so that I can see a lot about Ralph's performance going forward on my notes. I'm also going to open up Chrome, and I might do a little search for the Woolworths just because it's relevant, and we'll just browse there. Now, split view is where we can have two apps open. So if I wanted to do this just manually, it'd take me forever to kind of resize and get the right elements that I want. We can activate split view, which is a great way of viewing those to their maximum size. And this is how we do it. We basically click on the little green button, but we do a long press on our trackpad. So I'm going to hold it down for a couple of seconds, and then it comes up with these options. So what I can do is I can tile that whole window of my Chrome browser to the left. And then when I click on the other one that's open, it's going to go full screen. And so now I can move depending on which app I want to use and have more visible. I can drag my scaling slider just over here by grabbing it. And at any stage, I can actually just get rid of one of those and actually come back to full screen. So let's do that one more time. We do a long press, we click what side we want of the screen to be on. And because there's none available there, we need to have multiple ones. So why don't we open up once again our notes. We'll do a long press on there and have that window to the left. And then we just click on the other one that's open, and we can have those multiple up. In our last session, don't forget, we also talked about Stage Manager, which is a really, really good one to actually have and know about. So if I have my browser open and I've got my Keynote open and I've also got my notes open, we can go up to our control center, click on Stage Manager, and when we minimize now, it will go into different stacks depending on what we've got open. So we've got our web browser, Chrome stack, we've got Keynote, and we've got Note stack. And if I open up multiple notes and have different notes, we can then kind of push those into those different areas. So if we have another tab open here and we close both of those down, they're obviously going to have those multiple stacks in our Chrome browser. So you might have an email there, you might have calendar open. Instead of having multiple tabs, you might start to use those as separate windows within a Stage Manager. If this is not your preference, which a lot of clients don't like Stage Manager, but many do, we can just turn that off at any stage by going to our control center and turning that off. So there are our split views and how we can use those on our Mac a little bit more efficiently going forward. Let's have a look at accessibility. Let's say that we actually want to open up that document about Ralph, our employee, and have that text read to us. Let's look at some of the things in accessibility that we can turn on and off. So if we look at this, I might be in my car, I might be on my phone or on my iPad or on my Mac, and I might want to have that read to me. Some of those long business proposals or different client reviews that you might like to use. We access a lot of this through our accessibility. So if I minimize this for a minute, I go up to my Spotlight and I type in accessibility. Once again, we can get to that through our Apple. I know I've said this a few times. We can also get to accessibility through the icon down the bottom, so it's your personal preference. And you can see that accessibility sits beautifully just under appearance. Now, it's one thing that Apple does incredibly well is accessibility tools for you as the user. We're only going to go onto a couple of these, but I want to show you some of the different things that we can do. You can notice that on my Mac here, I've got my pointer that's pretty big. So my pointer control here is how quickly my pointer can actually move around my screen and do different things. We can also go up to, at any stage, up to our magnifying glass, which is our Spotlight, and we can type in, say, pointer size, and you can see here, this is where I can make my pointer big and small and customize it. I've made it big for you so that you can see what I'm clicking on. So once again, if you're finding it hard to find things, use that Spotlight. I think it's super important. Let's go back to accessibility. A couple of things that are worth turning on and looking at. The first one is definitely looking at spoken content. So if I click on the spoken content, what you'll be able to do here is select the voice, the speed and the volume, and you'll also be able to turn on the different things that we can do. So here we've got speak selection. This is one that I like to turn on because it means that I can select text from a website or from a document and have it read back to me. Okay. You also might like to turn on some of these other ones. Sometimes the speak under the pointer is a little bit automatic and actually can be a little bit frustrating, and same with the feedback. It's completely up to you. One of the things that I would suggest is adjust the speed and the volume and the accent or the type of people that's speaking back to you. That's super important. But I think this text to speech is really, really important going forward as well. It might be also looking at dictation. So the dictation is where you can enable on your keyboard the dictation to take place. So you can enable that and turn that on and off. By default, it's not often on. So you can turn that on, and we'll look at the shortcuts on your keyboard, but it'll also give that opportunity to actually speak and have that dictated into text. So you can turn that on and off, and enable that in regard to what it's actually. You can also look at the shortcut that you want dictation to come up. So on my keyboard, I've got a little microphone there, so I'll probably keep it, but you can actually look at different ways that you can turn on dictation if you're doing a lot of that in your type of work. Okay, so turning that on with dictation and finding that through Spotlight is a really great way to look at that. If I go back to my notes doc, now that I've turned on the spoken content, you'll notice that when I highlight some text, I can right click, which I've activated in video 1, my bottom right hand corner of my trackpad, but it's completely up to you. And you can see now that I've got a range of different areas. I've got a little area down the bottom that says speak selection, and that will come up because I've activated the text to speech on my area. You'll also notice that if I wanted to do some typing in this doc and I went to a new document, because I've enabled dictation, I can now turn on by pressing that shortcut. In my case, it was the little microphone, which is up at F5, and that will allow me to speak into my Mac and actually have that converted to text going forward. So those two elements that we talked about with accessibility is definitely typing in our Spotlight dictation and turning that on. But we also looked at our control center, our system settings. We went to accessibility, which is just underneath, and we turned on the spoken content. While you're in accessibility, don't forget that you can explore some of these other areas here in regard to a plethora of different tools that you can indicate going forward as well, right down to our zoom, what we can zoom into, voiceovers, and a range of different content from descriptions, and also a lot of accessibility tools for fine motor. And in the advanced basics section that we'll talk about in Mac Essentials, we'll also be looking at how you can get some suggestions of the things based on your needs that you can turn on in your Mac that will really help you access content and communicate more effectively with clients and also your fellow employees going forward. The final one that we need to talk about is our trackpad multi-touch kind of gestures. I'll go up to my Spotlight, type in trackpad. And in our first video, what we did is we turned our secondary click into either a 2 fingers in the middle of our trackpad to do our secondary click or a bottom right-hand corner. Now we can do some advanced features here. Let's have a look at some of them. One of the things that we use a lot on Mac is zoom. So here, zooming in and out, I've got with 2 fingers, pinching with 2 fingers on my trackpad. Some people like to have 2 fingers basically dragging down, but I like to do the pinch because I use my iPhone and my iPad quite a lot. So I want to reflect that gesture of zooming in on my screen by doing the pinch. The other thing that we've talked about in the first 2 sessions were things like mission control. So if I go into more gestures, you can see here that I can go to things like my notification center that we outlined in today's tutorial, and the mission control that we can actually look at how we navigate in regard to those different areas and accessing those different tools. So I've got swipe up with 3 fingers gives me my mission control instead of searching for it. If I want to go to my notification center, you can see I can swipe left from the right edge with 2 fingers, and I can start to customize those different aspects about how I go. We can even swipe between different pages of websites and different areas by actually setting up those more gestures here. Now, this can be as complicated or as advanced as you would like them to be, but if you are someone that does switch between documents or web pages, have a look at the more gestures because that allows us to do different things. Definitely look at your zooming in and out as one of your defaults. And the point and click is just basically that first one that you can actually speed up that click and have different sensitivity on the click itself. So have a look at those different things because if you're using things like mission control and your notifications quite often, train yourself up a little bit in using your fingers to do those multi-gestures going forward. You can see how using your trackpad can give you a little bit more functionality than actually connecting the different mouse elements. So let's have a look at what we've covered today in regard to our Mac Essentials. We've looked at system settings, our Spotlight, our notification center, our trackpad multi-touch gestures, accessibility, and split view. We'll be delving into a range of different things in video 3 of Mac Essentials, but hopefully that's given you some things to do a little bit of practice with and really get used to your trackpad, the system settings, Spotlight, and some of those notification widgets that will make your productivity and efficiency come to life on your Mac. Paul Hamilton here for Using Technology Better.